Hello there, Commonwealth from here. Bokoblins, moblins, combined bokoblin camp on top of a stone talus, a possible Kargarak on the surface, one new creature out of the hell that is the underground, and a possible automaton enemy in the sky is what we have seen to December 2022 at least in terms of non-boss enemies in Tears of the Kingdom, which let's be honest isn't much. Hence in this video we'll go over what else we can expect in the game when it comes to enemies, so be sure to press that like, subscribe and notification bell buttons as we go for 3000 likes when we explore what new enemies we could see inside Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Ganondorf is back and ready to command his legions against Link and truly be a challenge like no other we have faced since probably Zelda 2. The relative peace since the victory over Calamity Ganon and Dark Beast Ganon wouldn't last. When the forces of darkness resurfaced, they did so in a far greater number and variety than in the last 100 years, placing even the up to now safe settlements in danger of attacks or worse. Even Link, the Monster Slayer, will face new foes that might even put the golden Lynels of the Master Mode to shame, and add them to locations that up to now at least used to be free of native to the element enemies. At the same time, there are limitations that we cannot ignore, mainly timing when you're working on one of the most anticipated sequels of all time. Specifically when you want to maintain, while also expand the quality of your enemy AI from Breath of the Wild to Tears of the Kingdom. So the first question we need to ask when covering this crucial subject is how many of the enemies will actually be brand new, and which ones will just be rehashing enemies from Zelda's past. After all, the latter option was what the Zelda team went for nearly all of the organic non-humanoid enemies in Breath of the Wild, minus Taluses and Pebbles which were brand new, and that speaks volumes. It is clear that the Zelda team has valued enemy AI quality over quantity, and this approach, along with the few teasers we have received thus far, point to the fact that we could see some more enemies, but not as many as we might think. And then most likely in the sky and underground, something that fits well with the teasers seen in June 2021 and September 2022, since in these two new layers we have only seen brand new enemies, even though it has been a single entity each, unless Malice Rats are on Tears of the Kingdom's enemy menu. Back on the surface we can expect the Lizalfos, Wizrobes, Octoroks and Lynos to be altered both in appearance and placement on the open air map. But this is all a given. We should also not forget that some of the most powerful enemies in Breath of the Wild are gone, or at least decommissioned in Tears of the Kingdom, namely the mechanical ancient Sheikah Guardians of different sizes and classes. Right there we have one more enemy slot to fill. The surface truly needs new enemies, but luckily the list of replacement, not counting brand new enemies that we can't even imagine yet, is long. But we can visualize them thanks to Harry Darlington's concepts from 2017 of some of Zelda's past enemies. These include Deku Babas, Aracha, Skulltulas, Pose, Dodongos, and Darknuts, the final ones for Hyrule Castle and some other dungeons. Don't worry, we'll get back to the Darknuts later on in the video. And to be completely honest, 7 new returning and 1 to 2 brand new inclusions is around what we can expect on Tears of the Kingdom's surface, seeing that Breath of the Wild, not counting open world bosses, had 11. And then we mean unique enemies when we exclude the different variations within these, like style versions of enemies and Malice versions of the same enemies. But why not double it for the surface, say add in Stalfos, Geppetto, plus a number of enemies from Zelda 2 and other past 2D Zelda titles? Well, the answer is pretty simple. We also need more new enemies underground, so the up to now source of Malice, and also up in the sky. The latter which we know will be spending a significant portion of the game in. So which new enemies minus the potential Kargarok seen flying as Link made his way up to the sky will be found up in the heavens? Well, we already have the brand new possible Zone Automaton, so that is one. But if we look at sky-based enemies from Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, The Wind Waker, Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword, we get a better indication. Bubbles come to mind. The same goes for Majora's Mask, Takuri, Peahats, Gways, Errolfosses from Twilight Princess, and Phoenixes, Rock and Skytails from Skyward Sword. With that being said, it is still rather limited, and hence there's plenty of room to introduce brand new aerial and non-aerial enemies to the sky that dominates the box art of the game. Air-based enemies have always been fewer in number as they are trickier to program, but this game could really expand this frontier for Zelda enemies. The more we look at what appears to be two main layers of the game, the more we realize that the sky is where the new stuff will be hidden, waiting for Link as he tears his way up or time reverse the rocks that have fallen down. Specifically when it comes to more Zonai enemies, sharing the visual man-carved rock design of the automaton. But at the same time, we might expect at least a few of the enemies of the surface to also appear on the Sky Islands. After all, the enemy AI is already there and ready to be used, including regular enemies such as bokoblins, which we found in Breath of the Wild's Master Mode's floating platforms. There are many ways to cross the two, and it also wouldn't surprise me if a number of the enemies of the surface also make it down on the ground. Skulltulas are a perfect example of an enemy that can enjoy darkness in caves, and deeper. The same goes for Stalfos, Gibdo, Reedheads, Pose, Wallmasters, Floormasters, and plenty of Malice variations of existing enemies and new enemies like say this rat, just like we saw with the Malice Guardians and Lynels in Age of Calamity. No doubt Malice will be even more present in the game after seeing what happened to Death Mountain and Hyrule Castle. We're also likely to see brand new enemies as hinted by the shield flamethrower scene, but until we see more of the underground and gameplay from this layer, it is hard to predict how much the game takes place here. The confirmation of new caves where there used to be none is a sign in the right direction, but we need more before we can go truly wild with returning enemies of the darkness. Enemies are no doubt the grandest argument for an extensive underground layer, and the 3-layer formula is the way to go, but as we have said now multiple times, we need more information. The same goes with new jungle enemies, where no probes, the Zelda equivalent of snakes, should make a comeback. With that said, some snakes also like to go underwater, but the question is whether Link will do so, and this time also be able to stay underwater for a little while. One barrier within the existing 72 square kilometer open world that still remains to be broken and filled with enemies other than Octoroks and surface swimming Lizalfos. But that doesn't mean that we can't mention some underwater enemies and traps from Zelda's past. Enemies like Shellblades, Skullfish, Electric Bari, the Spreko, Frogs, and other brand new underwater enemies. This Hyrule is filled with water, and the underground might also have flooded underwater sections, so we need at least a couple underwater enemies for this title. Now let's conclude this video with the final destination, Hyrule Castle, and focus on one particular iconic enemy that has been with us since the start in 1986, Darknuts. We haven't seen them in a new Zelda game for as long as we haven't seen Ganondorf, so Twilight Princess. In other words, Tears of the Kingdom without Darknuts will not have the build-up we need as we storm the castle in our hunt after Ganondorf. It goes without saying that the Darknuts are the closest we get to Ganondorf's bodyguards, since the Yiga, even Blade Masters, are a complete joke. Hence it might come as a surprise to some that this iconic late-game Zelda enemy has only appeared in 2 of the 3 games where we fought Ganondorf, The Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. Their other appearances have been in 4 Swords, Link's Awakening, and the first Zelda game on the NES and Famicom. Speaking of The Legend of Zelda, we want the Darkness to be Tears of the Kingdom's Lynel inclusion, a classic Zelda temple and castle enemy that challenges our combat skill, and not only that, is also mandatory to face, unlike the Lynels, which technically could be avoided completely. Yes, even the one in Lanayru, as we only needed the arrows, not specifically from said Lynel, to attack Varuta. Having a similar structure to the Darknuts as in Twilight Princess, where we first face one as a mini-boss in a temple, and then again in Hyrule Castle, is good enough, but the best one by far was in the Wind Waker. Either way, we just want these fellow chads of the Zelda franchise, like the Lynels, to make a comeback when Ganondorf summons his strongest legions. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the main outline of what the new enemies of The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom should be. A balanced variety of new returning old and brand new, divided or shared across the 3 layers that will fight in this game: sky, surface, and underground. But naturally, we might have missed one specifically from some of the past 2D Zelda games, as indeed we focus primarily on the ones missing from 3D Zelda games. Mainly since we know that the sophisticated enemy AI introduced in Breath of the Wild limits the number of past and new enemies that can be added. So if you have some suggestions, place them in the comment section down below, and then we might include them in a future video, which naturally will take place after the next trailer of Tears of the Kingdom. If you haven't already, then be sure to leave a like, subscribe and press the notification bell to support the channel and not miss any upcoming Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, and Nintendo videos. Last but not least, a big thanks goes to all of you for watching, our great patreon.com/Comearound patrons, and in particular to our royal producer Charles Shash for making it all possible. You rock, and please enjoy one or both of these two awesome videos.